program is the Active Center.
All right, let's jump right in. In California, the battle over water is way more than just about drought. It's really a fight between getting ready for the long-term future and just surviving the very next disaster. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on a huge vulnerability in the system that most people don't even see.
I mean, just think about this for a second. Imagine the absolute worst-case scenario. A massive wildfire is blazing through your neighborhood. You see the fire trucks pull up, but when the firefighters go to hook up their hoses, nothing. The hydrants are dry. This isn't some sci-fi movie plot. It's a terrifyingly real possibility, and we're about to unpack exactly why.
Okay, so let's set the scene. We're in Los Angeles, the near future, January 2025. Now, this is a simulation, but it's one based on very real weaknesses in the system. You've got a monster wildfire whipped up by hurricane-force winds just ripping through the city's hillside communities.
And then it happens, right in the heat of the battle, at the absolute most critical moment. Firefighters connect to the hydrants, and they're either bone dry or the pressure is so weak they're basically useless. The number one tool they have has just completely failed them.
So they have to scramble for Plan B, which is not great. They're forced to bring in these emergency water tenders, basically giant water trucks, and drive them right into the fire zone, which is slow and dangerous. And then, in a move of sheer desperation, they start sending in planes to scoop water out of the Pacific Ocean. Think about that, dumping corrosive seawater on everything, which is terrible for the equipment and the local environment. It's just a messy, inefficient, and damaging way to fight a fire.
So, after the smoke finally clears, the big investigation starts. And what they discovered was pretty surprising. You'd think the problem was a statewide water shortage, right? That the state was just out of water. But nope. Turns out a lot of the huge regional reservoirs actually had plenty of water. The real failure, it was much, much closer to home.
And this right here is the absolute heart of the issue. You have to understand that we're talking about two totally separate water systems. There's the regional supply, that's the big picture stuff, the giant state reservoirs that hold water for millions of people. But then there's the local infrastructure. That's the stuff that actually brings the water to you. The network of pipes, pumps, and tanks that get water to a single hydrant on your street. So here's the kicker. Our local water systems were just never built for a disaster like this. They are engineered for the normal, predictable rhythm of daily life. Taking showers, doing laundry, maybe putting out a fire in one single house. They are absolutely not designed for the insane, massive surge in demand you get when firefighters open up hundreds of hydrants all at once across miles of city. And check out this number. During this fire, the demand for water skyrocketed to over 400% of the normal rate. 4 times! And it stayed that high for hours. That kind of extreme pressure just completely drained the local water tanks way faster than the main lines could ever hope to refill them. And when that happens, the pressure across the whole system just collapses. And just when you think it couldn't get worse, here's the final nail in the coffin. A super important local facility, the Santa Ynez Reservoir, which sits right up on a hill in the fire zone and is specifically designed to keep the water pressure high, was empty. Why? Because it had been taken offline for repairs almost a year earlier, and the work was still going on when the fire hit. It was just a case of tragically, horribly bad timing that turned a really bad situation into a full-blown catastrophe. Okay, so all of this really gets at a huge misconception people have about solving California's water problems. We all tend to think that the solutions have to be big and grand. But as we're about to see, the biggest fixes might not be the right ones for the most immediate dangers. Right? The logic seems pretty simple. If we're worried about not having enough water, well, let's just build more gigantic dams and create more huge reservoirs. It makes intuitive sense, and politically, it's an idea that gets a lot of support.
And hey, it's not just talk. Voters have put some serious money behind this idea. Take Proposition 1, for example. It was a multi-billion-dollar water bond, and a massive chunk of it, we're talking $2.7 billion, was set aside specifically for water storage projects. So the state is definitely investing in the more supply idea.
But here's the disconnect, and it's a big one. That money is meant for huge, state-level, regional projects. We're talking about maybe building a brand new reservoir hundreds of miles away in Northern California. These projects are all about securing our water supply for the long term, for the whole region.
And that is the total mismatch. The fire we just talked about wasn't caused by a lack of water in some reservoir 400 miles away. No, it was a failure of the nuts and bolts. The size of the pipes, the capacity of the pumps, and the amount of local storage right there in an LA neighborhood. Building a new dam up north does absolutely nothing to fix the water pressure on a street down south. And this quote it absolutely nails it. The disaster showed that the most urgent problem isn't necessarily a simple lack of water in the big state system. It's a massive need to modernize our local systems, to make them stronger and more resilient for the new reality of climate change. So, if the answer isn't just build more dams, then what is it? Well, you guessed it, this is where things get political. The whole debate over how to spend our money and what to prioritize is really split between three very different schools of thought.
Let's break down these three competing visions. On one side, you have a more conservative view that's all about increasing the total supply. So, using funds for new dams and desalination plants. For fires, they'd want dedicated, hardened local water systems. Then you have the liberal view, which focuses more on conservation in the environment. They're pushing for things like water recycling and improving the health of our watersheds to make the whole system naturally more resilient. And then there's a moderate view trying to find a balance, mixing some new, efficient storage with a big push for modernizing the whole system and forcing local districts to build in more backups and redundancies. So, as you can see, there is no single easy path forward that everyone agrees on.
And all of this leaves California standing at a fundamental crossroads. This simulated LA fire really forces us to look hard at the central tension in how the state thinks about water.
It really all boils down to these two core questions. Do we keep focusing our energy and money on those huge, big-picture projects that will secure water for decades? Or do we shift our priority to the small-picture, local upgrades that could literally save a neighborhood from the next fire or flood or earthquake? Now, ideally, we do both, but money and resources are limited, so choices have to be made. And that leads us to the final, critical question we have to ask ourselves. For decades, California's water system has been this incredible engineering marvel, but it was designed for the predictable needs of day-to-day life. As climate change brings us more frequent and more intense disasters, is that old design still good enough? Is our system truly ready for an age of disasters? Is it ready for the fire next time?